Terraria is a game of challenge and triumph, and lots of bosses. Some of these bosses really get you thinking on what must be done to defeat them and strategize what will work. Here is my personal top 10 list of hardest bosses in the game. The mechanical bosses are like buffed, shredded versions of the pre-hard mode counterparts. One eyeball could have been enough of a challenge, but 2 eyes is double trouble. The only increase during their second phase, while spasmatism is like a blowtorch. You have to stay miles away and it chases you, and retinizer being a fast shooting and dodging machine, it can be literal fear and skill that is what will get you to defeat this dual boss, even on normal. The Pumpkin, while an event and not a solo boss, its menacing appearance is warranted, with swarms of enemies that attack you to the Morning Wood, to the pumpkin scythes, to add on with its firing projectiles. While not the fastest boss, it can travel through any block easily, and there is no escaping from it, but its reward after killing it are worth the fight. It's not so much the boss itself that's the challenge, it's more so the insane amount of projectiles that the lunatic cultist deals at you that can do some serious damage, to the way he teleports and the way into the rotating ice ball, and the dragons make his pattern unpredictable unless you have fought the boss enough to memorize it. Overall, a pretty challenging experience for newer players, but is only an underlying enemy to a much bigger threat. Out of all the mechanical bosses, in many ways the twins are more aggressive, but overall Skeletron Prime's arms have unique attacks, each having over 5,000 health. You better be prepared to fight them from long distance, especially an expert or master. Not to mention the spikes that appear out of his head during his deadly spinning attacks. He is much faster than his Skeletron predecessor. The way the Martian saucer jerks around, shoots a bunch of lasers at you, and its unstoppable beam, including several aliens you fight, makes the semi-boss more frustrating than most boss battles combined. The drops are worth it if you can make it through the pain of dying several times, or take insane damage from just a few hits compared to the other bosses. To most Terraria players, the Wall of Flesh is a boss that we can all relate to fighting. It was the wrench in the cog that stood in your way of progression, whether it be building a massive platform only for the boss to spawn on the opposite end, or the trickiness of constantly trying to not fall in lava while being trapped in hell. You have to constantly keep moving, which makes the fight always fast-paced. While forcing the fight in fight or flight, the ice can be tricky and he gets faster the lower his health is, so it takes for a good challenge that is unique compared to other bosses in the game because of him being a big wall. A major debuff of this boss is Poisoned, which slowly drains your life down at a constant while being in the jungle. You have to avoid other enemies, and fighting in the underground can be hard structural wise, unless you build a proper arena. Also, the arms allow Plantera to easily target and lock onto your direction. Underestimating the giant flower would be foolish, but the reward is great, you know what you're doing. If you believe it was hard to stay away from the other bosses, Duke Fishron poses a serious threat to be dodged and can deal even greater damage than most enemies in the entire game. As long as you use a water walking potion and have a few platforms, the open space of the ocean is a better area to fight the boss, however only minimally. Overall, this boss takes skill, and even though it isn't required, it's most likely better left that way. The most visually pleasing boss fight I have seen, with 1.4 visuals being pretty cool. The boss fight is very difficult, having over 70,000 health, and complex attack patterns that are non-stop. No matter how many buffs you have an expert or master, you will always go down in health by 1 or 2 hits. There is no escaping the challenge either way. A boss you may want to save for close to last. A colossal-sized celestial being that is at the end of the game. Fighting this boss, he is maxed out in defense and has over 145,000 health, having 2 true eyes of Cthulhu in his hands and a laser shooting eye in his head, and his many minions that attack you in multiple row of lines. The boss will prove the testament of progression through your entire gameplay. Only through patience and several repetitive attacks can you truly even begin to damage this boss, but defeating this boss and all others will prove how good this game can really be when you stick to it. That is my top 10 list of the hardest bosses in Terraria. If you have your own list of boss difficulties ranked, comment down below. I would like to hear what you all think about this and whether you agree or not with it. Feel free to subscribe and give a like to the channel, as I am always uploading new content and there will be more top 10 lists in the future.